Hello, welcome to the video on ethics in research. Part of this presentation is based on Bryman and Bell's Research Methods Chapter 5, which has been authored by Tom Owens. This is a long video because it encompasses two sections. That's looking at ethics in research, but then focusing in on the University of Limerick Research Ethics Form and how to complete it. So let's get started. What are ethical issues in research? Well, I'm posing two questions here. And the first question is, how should we treat the people on whom we conduct research? And when I ask you to consider this question, the first thing I want you to think about is, how would you like to be treated if research was being conducted on you, and have that as your base moral standards for how research should be conducted. And the next question you should be considering is, are there activities in which we should or should not engage in our relations with those people? So Dinoir and Chandler in 1978 actually presented a very comprehensive explanation of what is ethical research. And there are four constituent parts, and actually you will see these parts echoed in the University of Limerick Research Ethics Form. And that is, no harm should come to participants. They should agree to participate and not be forced to participate. Be willing participants and know what the research is about. If it is about eggs, it should be primarily about eggs. It shouldn't be about boats or about egg cups or about telephones. If you have said the research is about one particular thing, it should be related to that. Or if it's about other elements, explain that it's further elements involved in the research. Their privacy should not be invaded. And finally, they should not be lied to or cheated. So how might you actually cause harm to participants? Well, it could be physically. It could be by damaging their development or their self-esteem, by causing stress, by hurting their career prospects or employment opportunities, and intertwined somewhat together by breaking their confidence and also by revealing their identity. So when you are completing your research ethics form, and part of your research ethics form will actually ask you about how you're going to inform the participants about the study, and also how are you going to reflect their responses. So you must make sure that you stick to what you agree to, deal with their confidential issues and also their identity and the other issues when you write the research ethics form. So research participants must know that is what they are. That is, that they are participating in research, and it must not be a cloak and dagger situation. And research participants should know about the research process and should be informed up front about what the research process is. However, Holman, 1991, actually said that implementing this is easier said than done, because it can be extremely difficult to present prospective participants with absolutely all the information that might be required to make an informed decision about their involvement. For example, if in ethnographic research, the researcher is likely to come into contact with a wide spectrum of people, and in ensuring that every participant in that collection are informed is possibly not practical, because it would be extremely disruptive in everyday contexts. So even though we say that research participants must know that is what they are, you must do your utmost to achieve that, and also your utmost to identify what the research process is. How might you have invasion of privacy Well, this is linked to the notion of informed consent. The research participant does not abrogate the right to privacy entirely by providing informed consent. Covert methods are usually deemed to be violations of the privacy principle. So the issue of privacy is invariably linked to the issues of anonymity and confidentiality in the research process. Again, you need to consider in the research ethics form, there is a question in the form asking about how are you ensuring anonymity and confidentiality. So when you get research ethics approval and you actually are conducting the research, you must always consider what you said pertaining to anonymity, confidentiality, and what you promise to the participant in the information sheet. Lies, damn lies and research. This is just a title that I think is quite all-encompassing, but deception usually means we represent or research as something other than it is, so that the participants will respond more naturally. But actually, if you go back to what I said about being ethical and DeAndre and Chandler's definition, we should not lie or cheat to our participants. So deception means not telling the whole truth while not actually telling a lie. However, we must be vigilant in keeping deception to a minimum, and when it is necessary to the research, mitigating its degree and effects as much as possible. Three various ethical stances are possible, and some are easy to achieve, and that is universalism, absolute rules about acceptable conduct, and absolute rules about unacceptable conduct. The other stance is a situation by situation case, where you might say the end justifies the means, but then again you have to ensure that you don't breach any of the ethical issues that we already presented, that you are not causing harm, that you aren't invading privacy, etc. The other ethical stance is somebody might say, well, ethical transgression is pervasive in research, and all other research involves ethically questionable practices. I think that is not an excuse. I think you need to have a universalism approach to your research. And if it is necessary in a situation ethics by case assessment, you still need to be as upfront as possible to your participant about the research you are conducting. So that's just a general introduction to ethics and research, and if you want to read more, please go to Bryman and Bell's chapter 5 in their book Research Methods for more content and more examples of ethical practice and unethical practice. The remainder of this video will now focus in on completing the research ethics form that everybody in the University of Limerick actually has to complete, be it faculty or students. So the basis behind this document is to ensure that all research being conducted in UL is done with ethical consideration. So this research ethics form is actually then evaluated by a group of individuals who are from various departments in the university, who can bring to the table different viewpoints and different perspectives on what is ethical and unethical. So what does the form actually look like that they will be evaluating? Well, on the front page, it's very much descriptive information about the applicant. Now, a research ethics form can be submitted on behalf of a group. So where it says name of student, here and also in the ID number, you present all the names of the individuals part of the group. Supply the email address of the communicator, then identify the programme of study. It might be the Bachelor of Business Studies. it might be the Masters in International Entrepreneurship Management, it might be some other program as well. And then you need to say, well, what is it that you are doing? Well, in your case, it is the Strategic Commercialization Plan, or it is your thesis. The working title of the project, that has flexibility to be open to change. But for your application, you still need a title. Who is your supervisor? And then the course leader. The course leader in this instance is Dr. Briga Hines. As you can see, the supervisor's name is stated up front, and then at the last part of the application requires a signature from your supervisor. So in order to complete and get ethical approval, you need to actually have a supervisor allocated to you. The other part of the front page of the research ethics form actually has a series of questions that it asks you to populate. And the first question is, does the proposed research involve working with human subjects? And you need to indicate yes or no. If it's no, proceed to sign and date the form and attach it to your project. However, if it's yes, you need to continue on with the research ethics form. The next section asks for a brief research plan. What is it that you are researching? How do you hope to achieve it? What's your time frame? What is the subject area? And that's to be done with a minimum of 50 words to 100 words maximum. Give some thought to this, because this is the first thing that is informing the panel about what your study is about. The research methodology requires 100 to 250 words. So I would be stating you are doing both secondary and primary research. Secondary research will take the form of published publications on your topic area. Then your primary research, and explain with content what your primary research method is. Be it telephone interviews, online surveys, interviews, or mixed method. Please expand on that so they understand the methodology that is adopted. So the next 3 pages are actually related to 3 sections that they ask the respondents, the applicants to answer yes or no to. Here you should tick the relevant box or delete the one that is not applicable. So here are a series of questions in relation to the human subjects that you are actually surveying. And you need to read through each of them and answer yes or no if they involve any of the listed individuals. The next section is subject matter. And here you need to consider whether or not sensitive issues are under examination, if you're asking about drugs or illicit activities or criminal behaviour, or an act such as, let's say, prostitution that may diminish self-respect or cause shame, embarrassment or regret. And finally, the last subject matter is research into politically and or racially or ethically sensitive areas. Again, as per section 1 of human subjects, you are answering yes or no. Put an X beside the word that is appropriate or delete the word that is not appropriate. And thirdly, it's procedures. Here are a series of questions about whether or not individuals know about consent, know about deception, or whether they're being deceived, and then about recording issues. So please again reflect on your approach and reflect on whether or not they have consent and if they are aware of what the research is going to be about. Again, yes, no answers, and the same procedure as section 1 and 2 previously discussed. Now, section 4 are a series of questions that need some substantive thought to and content, not single answers, like who will your informants be? I remember reading one draft and it said human beings. No, you need to clarify and expand on your informants. A sentence or two would be sufficient. Sometimes it's good to say that they will be over the age of 18, they're professionals, or they're knowledgeable in the field, or they're business people, etc. So you're expanding on the explanation of who the informants will be. Do you have a pre-existing relationship with the informants? Well, if you say no, state no pre-existing relationship exists with the informants. However, if a pre-existing relationship does exist, you need to actually explain what is the nature of that relationship. It could be that they have done business with the company that you're representing, or it could be that they were former classmates or students, etc. So please expand on that for the panel to understand about the relationship. The next is about gaining access, contact, or approaching the informants. So here you should consider a number of things, and that's first of all the access to. And also you can, in the same paragraph, talk about the contact. So it could be that you are accessing a publicly available database on companies, which entails contact numbers and names of individuals. And then the approach will be an initial telephone conversation, or it might be a call to the office in person, or it might be an email to the potential informants. So there are 2 or even 3 sections to this part of section 4. So please again put 3 to 4 lines on the thoughts here. This section on anonymity and confidentiality needs some content behind it. And here I would be recommending that you refer to the information sheet that will be provided to the participants, ensuring that confidentiality will actually be maintained. Anonymity, you might actually say that no names will be attributed to the respondents in the body of the report or anywhere in the report. The next is what, if any, is the particular vulnerability of your informants. It is not sufficient to put down none or no vulnerability. You need a little bit of expansion on this here. You should again just reflect back on your answer to A by saying that these are not vulnerable individuals, they are business professionals or knowledgeable in the field. However, if there are vulnerable informants, research will be stopped and guidance will be received from the supervisor. What arrangements are in place to ensure that informants know the purpose of the research and what they are going to inform about? This again reflects back to the definition about ethical research, and this relates to consent and understanding of participation and no deception. Here you should refer to the fact that your information sheet will also identify what is the purpose of the research, what the individuals are going to inform about, and this information sheet will be provided at all stages of communication with informants. Ensuring that informants are aware of their right to refuse to participate or withdraw at any time. Here you can state that prior to the commencement of gathering the primary research, the informants will be verbally and in writing informed about their right to refuse and about their ability to withdraw from the study during and after the participation. I've seen some research ethics forms actually get rejected because they don't answer the next section just because the individual said that all of the research is done online, so there's no safety issues. However, you always have to think of the unforeseen. So here you should actually say that any unforeseen safety issues, should they arise, will result in the research being stopped and advice and direction being sought from the supervisor and or from the KBS Research Ethics Panel. And the last question in section 4 relates to how do you propose to store the information? There is really a prescribed answer here, and it's not just an answer, you have to do this and have to approach your storage of the information properly. And that is that the information will be stored on a password protected USB key and or computer that is not associated to the local area network in the University of Limerick. And for paper copies, that those paper copies will be stored in a locked filing cabinet for 7 years. So they're the 4 sections of the UL KBS Research Ethics form. So if you have answered yes to any of the questions in sections 1, 2 or 3, you will need to apply for the full UL Research Ethics Committee form. In certain circumstances, the KBS Research Ethics Committee may actually refer applications to ULREC. The forms and more information can actually be found online, and the website is as per se. So just a little bit more of clarification on this answering of yes to the sections in section 1, 2 or 3, as it's also known as part A. So if you actually answer yes to those sections, you need to actually comply with part B of the form. If you have answered no to all of the questions in part A, you don't have to complete part B. So what is part B? Part B is further explanation of the potential situations that might arise with human subjects, with subject matter or procedures. The Ethics Committee is expecting a report to be attached to the application addressing a number of questions with a maximum of 300 words attributed to each question. So this means some thought needs to go into part B of your research ethics form. And what are those questions? Well, the first 3 questions are asking you what are the ethical issues involved in your research. Explain why the use of human participants is essential to your research project. Now, this will obviously depend on everybody's research question and research approach. And how will you ensure that informed consent is freely given by human participants? So each of those questions require a maximum of 300 words to be written about how you would answer those questions. Next, the following question, where relevant to your research project and after consultation with your supervisor and a member of the KBS Research Ethics Committee, asks you how will you protect human participants if your research deals with sensitive issues. Remember, this is where relevant. Your KBS Research Ethics Committee member will actually clarify what is a sensitive issue. How will you ensure that vulnerable research participants are protected? And please state clearly if you abide by the child protection guidelines and or have Garda clearance where necessary. How will you protect human participants if your research deals with sensitive research procedures? Outline how you intend to comply with any established procedures which have been approved by ULREG for your research. And finally, how will you manage data protection issues? So once you actually have those questions answered, if they are relevant, where if in part A you have actually answered yes to those 3 sections of questions, you now have to return 8 signed hard copies to Michelle Cunningham, who is based in KB 319 in the Chemie Business School. And each of the forms must have your signature and the supervisor's signature. An easy way to do this is get 1 copy, get it signed by your supervisor, and then you sign it, and then photocopy the document 8 times, keeping 1 copy for your own records. So what are the research ethics submission dates? Well, 2 of those dates have passed. Friday the 10th of January and Monday the 3rd of February. Monday the 3rd of March and Friday the 4th of April. Now, for your strategic commercialization plan and your thesis, I am putting a caveat that you have to have research ethics forms submitted on or before the 4th of April. Because this module is completed at the end of April and signed off and grades submitted. And part of your assignment is to have research ethics approval. So what are the stages of the application process? So you complete the relevant application form in consultation with your supervisor. All applications must be accompanied by an information sheet. Where appropriate, a consent form may also have to be submitted. You submit the form to the KBS Research Ethics Committee through Michelle Cunningham. The committee reviews the application and gives you feedback. The feedback could be, congratulations, you've received research ethics approval, or it could be, as point 4, you have to revise the application and return it to the chairperson of the Chemie Business School Research Ethics Committee, which is Dr. Patrick Buckley. The applicant is given formal ethical approval by the committee. You then can contact research participants with an informed sheet seeking consent to participate in the research project. And then you conduct the research. Now, some of your assignments or some of your thesis or even your strategic commercialization plan may involve patients in hospitals or employees of the HSE. If that is the case, ethical approval must be sought from the HSE Research Ethics Committee rather than the Chemie Business School or UL Research Ethics Committee. All applications must be typed. Handwritten applications will not be accepted. Please ensure all signatures are accompanying it. Please ensure you submit 8 copies. The KBS Research Ethics Committee meetings are held every month, with the exceptions of July and August. No research ethics approval, but you conduct primary research. Any implications? Absolutely. This is a disciplinary matter, and it will have an impact on the grade received. Though the case will be made on the situation will be looked on as a case-by-case basis and decided by the relevant course board. The principle of the research ethics policy of the University of Limerick is that informants participating in research are provided with information on the project, including explaining what is expected of them, what arrangements for confidentiality there are, and what is happening with the information that is being gathered. Participants may need to explicitly give their consent to participate in the research by signing a consent form or providing an indication of consent on the questionnaire itself. Are you allowed to include participants under the age of 18? Well, there are 3 tiers of research that can be done on participants under the age of 18. Research in schools related to schooling, research in schools not related to schooling, and research on under 18s which is not done in a school environment. For research done in schools, it is vital that the school give informed consent to the research being carried out. The teacher involved with the particular student group may also need to give their informed consent. For this type of research, it is recommended that an opt-out letter is sent to parents, where they are given an information sheet on the research which is proposed, indicating that if they do not want their child involved in the research, they can opt out of the project. Where the subject matter of the research is particularly sensitive or contentious, it may be necessary to get the express permission of parents to conduct the research, even in schools, and in these circumstances, an opt-out letter should be sent to parents. Where research is being carried out on participants under the age of 18 outside a school environment, an opt-in consent form is vital. It may also be necessary to have independent observers present at the time of the research, so as to safeguard the welfare of the participants. Sometimes research is carried out in a classroom which does not involve direct communication with the students themselves. In these circumstances, it is advisable to inform parents that the research is being carried out by way of an opt-out letter. In all cases involving research on participants under the age of 18, reference should be made to the University of Limerick Child Protection Guidelines. They're available at www.ul.ie/research ethics. And the acceptance of these guidelines should be indicated through the Child Protection Form. So what about the guidelines for faculty doing research? What about, sorry for the delay there, what about the situation where faculty are doing research involving university students? Data can be collected by the university or a state department for one purpose and reanalysed by a researcher for a completely different research question. Where a researcher proposes to do this, informed consent should be obtained from the body that has ownership of the data prior to submitting the research ethics application form to the KBS Research Ethics Committee. The data received should be made anonymous where appropriate, and the research cannot go beyond the boundaries of the consent agreement. Researchers should always be aware of the terms of the Data Protection Act when conducting this type of research. It is suggested, where possible, an external individual should conduct the research so that the student does not see the lecturer gathering this information and feel somewhat obligated to complete the research. What about guidelines for faculty doing research where identity is being revealed? It will be impossible to produce meaningful research while protecting the identity of the research participants. Where this is the case, the interviewees should be told about the general purpose of the research before the interview begins, which is best done through a preliminary independent contact so that the interviewee has time to reflect on any concerns they may have about the topic under investigation. If guarantees of anonymity are given, there should always be this issue respected. These guarantees should always be respected. However, permission for direct quotations need to be obtained, and it should indicate the context of quotation, whether it is for publication or merely for inclusion in an unpublished dissertation or thesis, or strategic commercialization plan. The researcher should establish whether the permission for the quotation has a time limit. Transcripts. The informant should be offered the opportunity to review the transcript of the interview. If the interview has not been tape recorded, but instead the researcher has constructed the conversation from notes or shorthand, then the review of the transcript is essential. If the interview is used extensively for a published work, the informant should be sent a copy of the final publication, or at least a photocopy of the section in which their own words appear. Guidelines regarding email surveys and consent. Surveys will often be sent out by email, with participants being asked to click a link and fill in the survey online. Where this is the case, it can be counterproductive to ask for a signed consent form. If this is the case, along with the information sheet contained in the email, the issues relating to consent should be included. And this can be included in the opening box of the questionnaire, explaining what the information is being gathered for, how the information is going to be dealt with, issues of anonymity and confidentiality, etc. So basically, by clicking the link to participate in the survey, the participant is deemed to consent, though they can withdraw at any time. Guidelines regarding the storage of information. It must be in a secure place, such as a locked cabinet in an office and/or password protected encrypted files. All data must be kept for 7 years after collection. Guidelines regarding information sheets and consent forms, because I've mentioned these two forms throughout this video so far. Well, they actually should have the official UL logo at the top of the page. They should include details of the primary investigator, the researcher, and KBS Research Ethics Committee approval. Where the researcher is a student, contact details of their supervisor should also be included. Copies of the information sheet are such as this. It should be provided to informants, which include a brief description of topic and method. It should explain what a participant will be expected to do, the amount of time involved, where the research will take place, can the change of location occur, any benefits or risks to the participants, explanation of the rights to anonymity, right of participant not to answer questions and withdraw at any time should be explained here, and then the relevant contact details of individuals. And then the consent form. The consent form can be copied from the UL Research Ethics website, and basically you get the participant to sign and date this form. I hope this has helped you understand ethics in research and also helped you to complete the research ethics form. Thank you.